A luxury sports utility vehicle sits entirely abandoned in the middle of a brightly lit and bustling Culver restaurant parking lot while heavily armed special weapons and tactics teams and federal agents aggressively secure the immediate perimeter. Shoppers and evening diners are pushed far back behind yellow police tape as they watch from a safe distance while specialized crime scene investigators meticulously process every single inch of the vehicle. This expensive piece of machinery was not stolen for a simple joyride, and it was certainly not left in this highly public location by mistake. It sits exactly 2 miles away from a quiet and unassuming residential street located in Tucson, Arizona, where an 84-year-old woman was taken from the perceived safety of her own home. The victim of this terrifying ordeal is Nancy Guthrie. She is the mother of the prominent television anchor Savannah Guthrie. However, this specific situation is far from a standard celebrity family extortion case. This is an incredibly sophisticated and utterly ruthless cryptocurrency ransom kidnapping that has completely baffled both local police and federal authorities. The criminals involved have specifically demanded untraceable digital money in exchange for the life of a medically fragile hostage. Why would a criminal kidnapping ring capable of orchestrating such a flawless digital ransom operation choose to leave a highly visible and incredibly expensive physical piece of evidence sitting completely exposed in a public parking area? This glaring and dangerous contradiction forms the exact center of an ongoing nightmare. The case of Nancy Guthrie currently remains a desperately active race against the clock for the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Every single passing hour drastically drains the lingering hope of a safe and secure return. Those microscopic forensic clues that remain hidden deep inside the seized luxury vehicle might be the only things truly capable of changing the entire downward trajectory of this complex investigation. The clock is relentlessly ticking down toward a devastating conclusion. If you want to dive deep into active investigative files and analyze physical evidence through the critical lens of a forensic detective, please hit subscribe to True Crime with Liam. We are going to carefully follow every single forensic development in this exact case together as it actively unfolds in real time right before our eyes. We will piece together the digital ghosts and the physical mistakes. We must begin by examining the deeply unsettling anomaly at the very core of this terrible crime. The victim is an 84-year-old woman who heavily relies on a surgically implanted pacemaker just to keep her fragile heart beating rhythmically. Furthermore, she suffers from severe high blood pressure. She absolutely requires the administration of daily medication merely to maintain her basic physiological stability and stay alive. She was never a prominent technology billionaire or an anonymous cryptocurrency whale moving millions of dollars across international borders. She was simply an elderly woman living quietly in her home. The anomaly here is incredibly stark and deeply disturbing. A highly technical and modern crime syndicate demanding decentralized digital currency purposefully targeted a victim who represents the exact opposite of the modern digital age. They did not attempt to compromise her local bank accounts or steal her physical jewelry from a secure safe. Instead, they ruthlessly leveraged her declining health and her very life against the massive public fame and the presumed financial wealth of her daughter. The power dynamic inherent in this specific crime is deeply horrifying to consider. We are looking at a faceless and technologically advanced criminal syndicate intentionally targeting an elderly woman whose continued survival literally depends on a small prescription pill bottle resting quietly on her bathroom counter. Every single minute, she is forcibly separated from her essential blood pressure medication. Her fragile body edges closer and closer to a totally critical medical emergency. The individuals responsible for this nightmare knew exactly who they were taking into the dark. They thoroughly understood her physical vulnerabilities and they weaponized her age against her family. This was absolutely not a random residential home invasion that suddenly went terribly wrong in the middle of the night. This was a cold and highly calculated strike designed to inflict maximum psychological terror. Think deeply about that quiet and unassuming residential neighborhood located in Tucson. Consider the modern security systems and the seemingly safe environment that surrounds those peaceful homes. The absolute and unbroken silence of the suburban night actually masks a profound and terrifying unease. Someone was quietly watching that specific house for an extended period of time. Someone was patiently waiting in the dark blind spots of the digital security cameras. Someone coldly calculated exactly how long an 84-year-old failing heart could withstand the sheer terror of a physical abduction before shutting down completely. The deep darkness lying just outside her front window was not just empty and harmless space. It was an active hiding spot for a ruthless predator who knew exactly when and exactly how to exploit an incredibly medically fragile target. The feeling that someone is constantly watching from the shadows, waiting for the perfect moment to strike, turns the concept of a safe home into a devastating trap. We must also consider the chilling implication of the silence that preceded the attack. The neighborhood did not notice anything out of the ordinary. The security protocols of a family connected to national media figures were completely bypassed without triggering a single immediate alarm. During the initial surveillance phase, this implies a level of operational security that is incredibly rare in standard kidnapping cases. The predators moved silently through a suburban environment, specifically choosing a victim who could not fight back and who could not run away. They turned her failing health into their greatest weapon and her quiet life into a horrific hostage negotiation. The unease settles deep into your bones when you realize that the most dangerous threats do not always arrive with loud noises and broken glass. Sometimes they wait patiently in the dark, completely unseen until the exact moment they decide to reach out and pull an 84-year-old woman into a nightmare from which she cannot wake up. The transition from the quiet and invisible unease of the preceding days shatters completely and violently in the dead of night. It is the very late hours of January 31st, slowly bleeding into the early morning darkness of February 1st, 2026. The digital eye of a modern Nest security camera prominently mounted near the front door of the residence captures the exact terrifying moment the nightmare officially begins. The motion sensor quietly triggers its recording mechanism. A solitary figure steps out from the suffocating darkness of the Tucson night and moves directly onto the illuminated concrete of the front porch. Authorities investigating the case would later officially refer to this terrifying unknown figure simply as the Porch Guy. He is described as a male standing approximately 5 feet 9 inches to 5 feet 10 inches tall, possessing an entirely average physical build. That blends into any crowd. But there is absolutely nothing average or ordinary about his terrifying physical presentation on that camera footage. Every single inch of his body is purposefully and meticulously concealed to completely defeat any chance of visual identification by law enforcement. He wears a dark and heavy ski mask that obscures his facial features entirely, leaving only his eyes barely visible in the eerie infrared glow of the security camera footage. His hands are completely covered by thick, dark gloves, ensuring that not a single microscopic fingerprint or trace of skin cells will be left behind on the door handle or the surrounding glass. He wears loose-fitting long pants and dark, non-reflective clothing specifically designed to blend seamlessly into the deep shadows of the residential neighborhood. Strapped securely and visibly to his body is a tactical handgun holster, clearly and undeniably indicating that he arrived at the location fully armed and completely prepared to use lethal violence to achieve his criminal objective. Slung heavily over his shoulders is a very specific 25-liter Ozark Trail hiker pack. A backpack of that specific volumetric size is absolutely not meant for a quick and casual residential burglary. It is intentionally designed to carry significant supplies for a sustained physical operation, or perhaps it was packed to carry specialized breaching tools specifically needed to defeat a secured door and rapidly subdue a frightened hostage in the middle of the night. The most chilling aspect of the footage is his demeanor. He does not cower in the shadows. He does not attempt to hide his masked face from the glowing ring of the camera once he steps foot onto the porch. He walks directly into the clear field of view with an absolutely chilling and calculated level of dark confidence. He is completely unafraid of the recording lens because he has prepared meticulously for this exact violent encounter. He knows the digital camera is watching his every move and he simply does not care. He is fully weaponized and remains completely anonymous beneath layers of dark fabric. The security footage serves as a silent and deeply horrifying historical record of a ruthless predator stepping deliberately over the sacred threshold between the supposed safety of a family home and the physical reality of a targeted abduction. The sheer brazenness of a masked and armed man standing squarely in the middle of the camera frame sends a cold shiver down the spine of every seasoned investigator who reviews the digital tape. He is a heavily armed ghost captured in high definition. He moves with a predatory purpose that suggests he has rehearsed these exact steps multiple times in his mind. The terrifying reality is that he did not just come to steal property. He came specifically to take a human being, and he brought the physical tools necessary to ensure that absolutely nothing would stand in his way. The psychological impact of watching this figure approach is devastating. You are witnessing the exact fraction of a second where a peaceful life is violently interrupted by a calculated criminal conspiracy. The Porch Guy represents the ultimate violation of safety, and his cold, deliberate movements confirm that Nancy Guthrie never stood a chance against such overwhelming and prepared aggression. The truly horrifying physical reality of that dark night becomes fully and tragically apparent as the sun finally rises over Tucson. On the morning of February 1st, Nancy Guthrie is officially and urgently reported missing from her quiet residential home. Local law enforcement officers arrive rapidly at the property, expecting to conduct a relatively standard welfare check on an elderly citizen, but instead, they immediately find a physical scene that instantly escalates the situation into a massive, high-priority federal crisis. Right there, resting starkly on the cold concrete of the front porch, investigating officers discover a highly disturbing and undeniable biological trace. There is a visible amount of physical, biological evidence left behind at the scene. This biological trace is later conclusively and officially identified through rigorous laboratory testing as belonging directly to the 84-year-old victim. The undeniable presence of this physical evidence immediately and permanently shatters any lingering optimistic hope that she might have simply wandered off or left the residential property willingly during the night. She was subdued. She left a biological trace on the very doorstep of her own supposed sanctuary before being forcibly dragged away into the terrifying unknown. As the physical evidence overwhelmingly points toward a chaotic physical struggle, the truly sinister digital terror campaign simultaneously begins to unfold. Mysterious and highly threatening ransom demands begin arriving at major national news outlets. The sophisticated perpetrators behind this crime are absolutely not asking for traditional duffel bags full of unmarked cash to be left quietly in a public park. They are aggressively demanding a massive and immediate financial payout in entirely untraceable cryptocurrency. They deliberately set incredibly strict and unyielding deadlines for the digital transfer of the extorted funds. The federal authorities and the terrified family members wait in agonizing and helpless suspense as the first established deadline slowly arrives. The exact time passes. Absolutely nothing happens. A second equally strict deadline is quickly issued by the faceless kidnappers. The emotional tension reaches an absolute breaking point as the digital clock ticks down to zero once again. The second deadline completely passes in total and deafening silence. In the incredibly dark history of ransom kidnappings, the passage of a demanded deadline without any subsequent communication or consequence is a universally terrifying indicator for law enforcement. The criminal syndicates involved have provided absolutely zero proof of life to the authorities or the family. They have not sent a recent digital photograph. They have not provided a short audio recording of her voice. They have offered absolutely nothing concrete to prove that the highly vulnerable elderly woman is actually still breathing. When you carefully combine the critical absence of her daily life-saving heart medication, the reality of the physical biological evidence left on the concrete porch, and the deafening digital silence from the captors, Immediately following two consecutive missed deadlines, a genuinely horrifying investigative question emerges. Is this actually an ongoing financial extortion scheme, or are federal investigators currently dealing with a physical homicide cleverly disguised as a sophisticated digital ransom operation? The established facts are pointing heavily toward a deeply tragic conclusion, but the active search must continue with relentless and unwavering intensity. If you deeply appreciate this kind of thorough forensic analysis that relies strictly on verified physical evidence rather than wild internet speculation, please take a quick second to hit the like button on this video. Your continued support allows us to keep analyzing the hard facts of complex active cases without ever relying on baseless social media rumors. We are actively staring into a dark void where a vulnerable victim seemingly vanished without a trace, leaving behind only digital threats and physical evidence on the ground. The silence is not just the absence of noise, it is a psychological weapon wielded by the captors to maximize the terror inflicted upon the family. Every hour that passes without a confirmed proof of life drastically reduces the statistical probability of a safe recovery. The biological evidence on the porch indicates a physical struggle, while the digital ransom demands whisper of a cold and calculated greed. To truly understand the complete and terrifying timeline of this horrific crime, federal investigators have to intentionally look backward in time. They must carefully peel away the layers of the preceding weeks to fully reveal the massive scope of the predatory planning involved. The truly terrifying reality is that the physical abduction occurring on the 1st of February was absolutely not a spontaneous or random event. Federal agents and local authorities traced the dark origin of this ongoing nightmare back exactly 20 days earlier to the specific date of January 11th, 2026. On that particular day, there is a crucial and highly significant surveillance event recorded by investigators. The unknown suspects were reportedly physically present in the immediate neighborhood, actively and meticulously scouting the specific target location. They were carefully studying the physical layout of the residential property. They were accurately mapping the potential police response times for that specific street. They were quietly learning the predictable daily routines of a highly medically fragile 84-year-old woman, Pima County Sheriff. Chris Nano stands directly before the gathered media and clearly articulates the truly terrifying nature of this specific crime. He explicitly and confidently states that this was a highly targeted and deliberate attack. It was absolutely not a desperate crime of random opportunity. The ruthless perpetrators knew exactly who lived inside that specific house, and they deliberately spent nearly 3 full weeks meticulously planning the absolute perfect moment to strike from the shadows. They completely understood the highly visible and high-profile nature of the victim's prominent family, and they coldly calculated the massive financial leverage they could successfully exert through a sophisticated digital ransom demand. But this specific chronological revelation introduces a massive and thoroughly baffling paradox directly into the art of the federal investigation. If a criminal syndicate is genuinely sophisticated enough to confidently demand untraceable cryptocurrency and patient enough to conduct undetected physical surveillance for 20 uninterrupted days, why would they make such catastrophic and rudimentary physical errors at the actual active crime scene? The entire complex operation seemingly requires extreme criminal intelligence and absolute physical discipline, yet the final physical execution of the abduction was inexplicably sloppy. They spent long weeks planning the perfect digital crime only to attack an elderly woman directly on her own front porch, actively leaving her physical biological evidence right in front of a recording motion-activated security camera. The terrifying individual known as the Porch Guy was completely covered from head to toe in dark clothing, specifically to prevent leaving any physical evidence behind. But the sheer uncontained chaos of the physical extraction created a messy biological crime scene anyway. This glaring inconsistency is the fundamental contradiction that federal investigators are desperately trying to exploit right now. The meticulous and cold digital planning collided with the unpredictable physical reality of an actual abduction. The unknown suspects clearly tried to execute a perfectly clean and untraceable extraction, but human nature and the desperate physical struggle of a terrified victim caused their perfect plan to entirely fracture. They unintentionally left a crucial piece of themselves behind in the chaos of that midnight struggle. They made a fundamental and potentially fatal biological mistake on that concrete porch. And while they currently attempt to hide safely behind the absolute anonymity of decentralized digital currency networks, they absolutely cannot hide from the physical reality of the biological evidence and the undeniable struggle they physically left on the concrete. The seasoned investigators know with absolute certainty that somewhere in that timeline between the cold calculation of January 11th and the physical reality of February 1st, the perpetrators completely lost control of their perfect crime. They left a microscopic but vital breadcrumb trail, and the federal authorities are following that exact trail with absolute and relentless precision. The digital ghosts who orchestrated this nightmare are about to meet the harsh and unforgiving reality of modern forensic science. The 20 days of careful surveillance might have given the attackers the element of complete surprise, but the physical struggle on the porch gave the federal investigators the exact physical evidence they need to begin tearing this massive criminal conspiracy apart piece by piece. The paradox of a highly sophisticated digital ransom scheme completely unraveling due to a physical struggle provides the only glimmer of hope in this dark case. The kidnappers believed they could control every single variable from the shadows, but the physical world always leaves a trace. The biological evidence cannot be encrypted or hidden behind a digital firewall. The federal agents are now facing a brick wall of absolute silence and sophisticated digital encryption that traditional police methods simply cannot penetrate. Despite the clear security, footage, and the unsettling biological traces found on the concrete porch, the trail for the suspect known as the Porch Guy has gone completely cold in the national criminal databases. Every single fingerprint scan and every traditional DNA profile entered into the combined DNA index system has returned a frustrating and total lack of a match. This man is a ghost with no prior criminal record on file. To shatter this tactical stalemate, the Federal Bureau of Investigation has been forced to pivot toward an advanced and highly specialized field of science known as investigative genetic genealogy. They are no longer just looking for a direct match in a database of known offenders. Instead, they are meticulously scouring massive public ancestry platforms to find any distant biological relatives of the masked abductor. This painstaking process is a desperate attempt to build a reverse family tree that might eventually lead them to a name and a face. However, this sophisticated genetic reconstruction takes an immense amount of time that Nancy Guthrie simply does not have. She has been separated from her essential heart medication for far too long. The biological clock is ticking much faster than the laboratory equipment can process the complex genetic markers. According to reports from Fox Live Now, this single glove found near the scene is the only physical link they have to the identity of the kidnapper, but it remains a silent witness for now. The investigators are trapped in a high-stakes waiting game where the prize is the life of a vulnerable 84-year-old woman. While the scientists labor in the lab, the field agents are desperately searching for a physical break in the surrounding Arizona desert. They know that even the most disciplined criminal cannot vanish into thin air without leaving a single mechanical footprint. The frustration among the task force members is palpable as they realize they are dealing with someone who understands exactly how to stay off the traditional grid. Every lead is being followed to a dead end until a sharp-eyed investigator notices a minor anomaly in the local traffic patterns near the residence. The tension is nearly unbearable as the realization sets in that the digital ransom demands might just be a massive smokescreen for something far more personal and sinister. If you find this deep dive into the high-tech world of modern forensic genealogy fascinating, please share your own theories in the comments below regarding how a person can stay so completely hidden in our modern world. We are witnessing the absolute limit of traditional policing being tested by a new breed of anonymous predator. The breakthrough that the entire nation has been waiting for finally erupts in a dramatic display of federal power just 2 miles away from the quiet Guthrie residence. The Mysterious and expensive Range Rover SUV that was first spotted sitting abandoned in the Culver restaurant parking lot becomes the explosive center of a massive tactical operation. This is the definitive peak two of the entire investigation. Federal agents and SWAT teams did not just stumble upon this vehicle by accident. They had been tracking its movements through a complex web of private security cameras and automated license plate readers throughout the county. The discovery of this specific vehicle explains the massive investigative gap that had previously baffled the authorities. This luxury SUV was the mobile command center for the entire operation. When forensic teams finally gain access to the interior of the seized Range Rover, they do not just find leather seats and high-end electronics. They discover a treasure trove of physical and digital evidence that links the kidnapping directly to the meticulous surveillance that began back on January 11th. The vehicle was reportedly used as a blind for the weeks of scouting conducted by the suspects. Inside the cabin, investigators find remnants of tactical gear and evidence of a sophisticated mobile hotspot used to send the encrypted cryptocurrency ransom demands. The reason the vehicle was abandoned in such a highly visible public place was not a mistake of the kidnappers. It was a calculated move to shed the primary physical evidence once they realized the FBI was closing in on the specific license plate. The Range Rover was the bridge between the digital world of Bitcoin and the physical world of the Tucson desert. By seizing this car, the FBI effectively captured the kidnapper's electronic footprint. They find digital logs that prove the ransom. Emails were drafted and sent from within this exact vehicle while it was parked in various locations around the city to avoid detection. The mysterious vehicle in the woods that the public had heard so much about was actually this high-end SUV hiding in plain sight among the wealthy suburbs. This discovery changes everything for the Guthrie family. It provides the first concrete proof that the kidnappers were local, or at least had a significant local base of operations. The forensic extraction of data from the vehicle's onboard computer reveals a series of GPS coordinates that lead directly back to a secluded area in the woods where the FBI believes the final handoff or the initial holding cell was located. The mystery of the Porch Guy is no longer a ghost story. It is now a documented trail of breadcrumbs leading toward a final confrontation. The sheer scale of the evidence found inside the Range Rover suggests a multi-person cell rather than a lone wolf. Attacker. The sophistication of the tech found inside the car matches the cold clinical nature of the ransom notes. The investigation has finally moved from the defensive into an aggressive pursuit of the people who sat in those seats and planned the destruction of a family. The resolution of this harrowing ordeal begins to take shape as the massive weight of federal resources finally bears down on the suspects identified through the vehicle. However, the central mystery remains tragically unresolved. While the FBI has identified the primary vehicle and the digital origin of the threats, the physical location of Nancy Guthrie herself is still shrouded in a terrifying uncertainty. The suspects have been cornered, but they are not talking. The search teams are currently combing the specific GPS coordinates found in the Range Rover computer, focusing on a dense and rugged area of the Arizona wilderness. There is a profound sense of relief that the mechanical tools of the crime have been recovered, but it is heavily tempered by the reality that an 84-year-old woman has now been missing for weeks. The biological evidence on the porch and the DNA on the glove have provided a name, but the clock has nearly run out for a safe rescue. The community of Tucson remains on high alert as the tactical teams move from the city streets into the deep brush of the desert outskirts. We are left with the haunting question of whether the sophisticated technology used to track the kidnappers was fast enough to save the victim. The case has transitioned from a high-tech digital mystery into a grueling physical recovery operation. The transition from the high-stakes chase to the quiet realization of the human cost is devastating for everyone involved. The Guthrie family continues to plead for any information while the FBI maintains a tight lid on the final details of the ongoing tactical search. The resolution of the forensic puzzle is nearly complete, but the human resolution is still hanging in a delicate and painful balance. We are left to wonder if the greed for cryptocurrency was worth the total destruction of multiple lives. The scientific victory of the FBI in tracking the untraceable vehicle is a landmark in modern policing, but it remains a hollow triumph without the safe return of the hostage. The desert holds its secrets tightly, and the final chapter of Nancy Guthrie's story is still being written in the dust and the shadows of the Arizona woods. This complex case provides a profound education into the changing face of modern criminal activity and the evolution of law enforcement. What this case teaches us about the shifting landscape of ransom crimes is that the traditional barriers between digital and physical threats have completely evaporated. We are seeing a new era of criminal entrepreneurship where decentralized finance is being weaponized against the most vulnerable members of our society. The use of cryptocurrency was intended to grant the kidnappers absolute anonymity, but the investigation proves that physical errors are still the primary downfall of even the most tech-savvy predators. The lesson for public safety is clear. Our digital footprints are now inextricably linked to our physical safety. The FBI's use of investigative genetic genealogy and advanced vehicle telematics represents the new frontier of forensic science. This case serves as a critical warning that while criminals may adopt new technologies to hide their identities, the fundamental principles of forensic biology and physical evidence remain the most powerful tools in the hands of the state. The analytical reality is that we are moving toward a world where no one can truly remain a ghost if they leave behind even a single microscopic trace of their biological or mechanical existence. The story of Nancy Guthrie is a stark reminder of the inherent cruelty found at the intersection of high technology and human greed. It highlights the desperate need for a faster and more integrated response to crimes that bypass traditional security systems. As we close this chapter, we are left with the chilling image of the abandoned Range Rover as a monument to a crime that was almost perfect but ultimately failed due to the unavoidable reality of the physical world. If you want to continue exploring how modern science is being used to hunt down the most elusive predators in the world, please subscribe and click the notification bell to stay updated. We will continue to follow the developments of the search in the Arizona woods as the FBI closes the final loop on this investigation. If the DNA results from the Porch Guy's glove reveal a connection to an even larger criminal network, we will bring you that update immediately. Thank you for joining us on True Crime of Liam as we seek justice through the lens of forensic truth. What other secrets are hidden in those desert woods that we have yet to uncover?